Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Hi, guys, and welcome back to the show today. Today's episode is, oh man, we are going there. We are just going to go for it and do it today because this question has come up so many times, phrased in different ways. And there was something about the way this question was phrased to me this past week that I really want to help here if I can, as much as possible. I also know that this subject is very tender and a thing that so many of us are just trying our best and really working with what we've got and with what we know. And so that's why I thought that maybe this would be a great thing to address and talk about, because maybe, just maybe, this is my hope, that you will learn something that you've never heard before, or in a way that you've maybe never heard it specifically explained that way, or things that maybe you could try that you haven't tried already. So today's question came into me like this: how do you improve kids eating when you've been doing it all wrong? And at first, this question just breaks my heart because I really don't believe that there is a wrong way, and that you could feel as a parent that you're doing it all wrong, you've messed your kids up, that there's nothing you can do from this point forward. So I actually had to ask for some clarification on this. I'm like, what do you mean by wrong? And there was a couple of different answers that came in. One was that they feel like they're doing it wrong because their kids are super picky, because their kids refuse to eat vegetables, because their kids snack all the time instead of eat their meals, because it's become this power struggle because all they want to eat is sugar or sweeter things, or that they feel like they've been using food in their family as a reward or a bribe. And so let's just take out the word wrong. There are so many different ways to feed your kid. And this episode comes with zero judgment on what you decide to do in your family. That's what this is all about. There's not a right way, or somebody is better than you because they feed their kids a certain way, but it's really about figuring out what is going to work for you, what aligns with your values as a couple, as the parents, as the family in general. How do you want your kids to be raised around food? What type of environment? What type of relationship to food? That kind of thing, which for the most part, I would say is something that most people don't really think about. It just sort of starts happening when they're young parents, and all of a sudden their babies are getting ready to eat food and they're not really quite sure what to do. So they're scrambling, and then nobody has any time because everybody's super busy. And that's what modern day life is about. So before we dive into things, I just want to say that this is not something that I feel is a thing that you should be feeling so bad about as a parent, because we just aren't really taught or educated to even think more intentionally about food and the role it plays in your own life, let alone as a couple, let alone as a family, let alone for your kids. And so I feel like that's the first step, is to even just think about it and thinking through, what do I ideally want it to be? How do I want my kids to think about food? Is it about fuel? Is it about nourishment? Is it about reward? Is it about pleasure? There's so many different ways and so many different answers. One is not better than the other. But I think because the way our culture is set up, it's so quick fix oriented. This is where I feel like it's not necessarily the parents' fault if their kids have been eating in a way that maybe they're realizing, oh, I don't love this. This is actually a lot more work for me because now they're picky, and now meal times are a battle, and now there's all of these things that I'm having to compensate for and be prepared for if they only have a very small window of foods that they can do or will do, and then it becomes this power struggle. But this quick fix mentality runs so deep in everything in our culture, especially so with food, where really it's not ever about what is healthiest. The norm that we are all walking around in is what is the quickest, the fastest, the easiest, or the most convenient. And it's never thought about, let's think about this in a longer term picture. How do I want to be cooking? Do I want to be cooking separate meals? Do I want them to have to eat separated foods all the time? That seems like a lot more work. But again, that's a longer term thought versus just in the moment. So wherever you find yourself now, and if it's not where you're wanting to go, or if things are not feeling good, or you're realizing all of a sudden that this is not the vibe that you want with your food and your kids and your family, I really think that it is not too late to start. And the place that I would start to think through, what is that bigger term vision? If you could choose, what would that look like and what would that be, so that at least you have a starting place? Because that's what's going to help you when, come on, life is so busy, and especially so with kids and work and all these other commitments that we have, and we're trying to take care of ourselves. Life is busy. There is not a ton of time usually in most modern day lives that is set aside to think about food, to plan about food, to be more intentional about food. And it's very countercultural, I would say, to do that. But at the same time, if what you're wanting as your vision is different than what the norm is for most people walking around, then it does require a different way of being, a different way of preparing, modeling, spending a little bit more time or energy in the area of food, if that's specifically where you're trying to change. So switching from that quick fix mentality to more of the longer term vision here. What is the healthiest option? What is the thing that's going to help develop their taste buds? Thinking through these bigger things. What are they going to think about food and treats or desserts? What will be their association with it as they get older? And so it's just an interesting conversation, and none of us really know. You could be doing all the quote unquote right things, and your kids are not doing what you hope they would. And that's just also a part of parenting. But today's episode, I'm really hoping to maybe give you some tangible tips of, here's what I would do if I noticed that food is not going down how I like it to be, or I'm feeling frustrated by how much work and time and effort it's actually taking now to deal with the picky eaters, the ones obsessed with sugar and sweet stuff and only want snacks instead of meals. I do think there are some things that you can do, or at least try to do. It doesn't hurt to try and to implement some change and to bring a little bit more of the education into your own house. That's the way we change things. Think about kids now who grow up learning the difference between real food and not real food and processed food, real food and the processed health food. This is the stuff that I talk about and teach all the time in all of my programs, that there's a huge discrepancy between the two, and helping them get educated. So depending on the age of your kids, this could be a process that you do with them, or you try to involve them in it. Even teaching them, if your kids are older or old enough to read, how to look at an ingredient label. And you can keep it so simple and very practical. If they can turn it over and it's lines and lines of stuff, and it seems like it might take a long time to read, you can say that's probably a good sign that it's maybe not real food. If they can read the words and they can pronounce it, that's a good sign. Kids should be able to pronounce the ingredients that are in their foods. Should be simple, should be as short as possible, should be things they can recognize, not long words, which are usually chemicals, which are usually additives, which are usually tons of other things that are foreign concepts. If your kids are in that stage or age, it would be great. Help them out. Give them a gift that they can really be using for the rest of their life. Even if they don't immediately take to it or they're not immediately fascinated, that's okay. They're still learning, and they're seeing what you're doing, and they're seeing the types of things that you are buying at the store and bringing into your home. And I think that's a great starting point. If you have younger kids, maybe they're toddlers, maybe they are just starting to eat more like an adult would be, you're not going to be like showing them how to read a label, although you could if you wanted to. But it then becomes more on you to take this on as something that you're wanting to do for your family as a protector. You, as their parent, are their protector. You're the protector of their body. You're the protector of their taste buds. You are the decision maker when it comes to what you are spending money on at the store, what you are bringing home, what's being modeled. In the case with younger kids, it is so helpful that you are going to be doing this process maybe with your partner. Maybe it's you that feels more passionate about it, but making sure that you are both on the same page about this being a value and a way of eating that feels more joyful and more sustainable and healthier long term. It has nothing to do with being perfect and being rigid and it having to be a certain way or having to be perfectly real food, versus your intention behind it of raising the vibration of the foods in your house, raising the level of ingredients. You're trying to start crowding out some of the stuff that is addictive from an emotional level, addictive from a taste bud level, addictive from a processed food level. Processed foods are designed to be addictive, right? To coat your taste buds. You can't taste what real food tastes like because all you taste are the chemicals and the flavors, and that's what keeps you going back and wanting more. Having the first thought or intention being, okay, we're going to take this on as a family. And depending on the age of your kids, you're going to either involve them or maybe they're not as involved, but you are owning more of that decision maker role in your family of what you are allowing to go down in your house and the things that you're not. And that is a purely personal decision. I know a lot of people and families who do this a lot of different ways, where they have things that they eat in their normal daily life through their normal rhythms of things for lunch, things for dinner, their normal snacks. And then when they're on vacation or when they're out or at birthday parties, they do whatever and let loose there. There's other people that feel like they want a little bit more structure even in those other times. So it's totally up to you, and just thinking through, again, where you want this to go. What's the ultimate vision here and how you want to be around food, how you ideally would want your kids to be too. The second thing that I would encourage you to think about is determining whether you want to try this experiment as a hard pivot or as a soft, gentle, gradual thing that you're doing over time. And you will know, I think, the personalities in your family best. You will know what they're fixated on right now or focused on right now. You will also know if you're past the point, this is just too much, we need a fresh start. This is the only way that this will work is if I do a complete clean house. Get all the stuff out that you know is more processed food, that has tons of ingredients, that has tons of sugar, that there's no nutrient value to it at all, and getting those out. So you can do the hard pivot where you're physically removing and donating the stuff that you don't really want your kids to be eating anymore, but then make sure you do come in with some other upgraded replacements. It's not going to work well to just throw out everything. By the way, probably don't do that. When they're around, there will be a lot of emotions and probably won't go down well. If your kids are a little bit older, they might understand, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do as a family. So let's start going through the pantry together and let's look at these things, and trying to make it fun for them, that they're not being scolded or told that food is bad or good, trying to be pretty neutral about it either way. So if you are going to do that hard pivot, make sure you come in with some other options. So going to a place like Whole Foods or ordering from Thrive Market. If it's the snack food, trying to upgrade the snack food first, or upgrade their treats or their cookies or their candy. I think it can be helpful maybe to even pick one category. This would be more the slow, gentle route. Pick one category in that pantry or in your fridge or in the freezer of how could I get maybe the same type of thing, but at least I know the ingredients are better, and just start replacing with things that are a little bit more simple, a little bit more real, fewer ingredients overall. You know your family best, the age of your kids best, whether you're going to want to teach them or slowly and gently do this on your own as the little food fairy coming into your house. But your primary goal in this first stage is really about their taste buds. And I cannot emphasize this enough. We do not get taught this in school, but the amount of impact that that one thing has on the foods they will gravitate towards, the things that they like, the things that they'd be willing to taste, the things that they would be open to trying, goes way up when their taste buds are not coated. And that's what happens with all the chemicals and the stuff that is in the processed food or processed health food even, is that it coats our taste buds. And this is true for adults, by the way. Maybe we should have titled the episode Changing Eating Habits for Adults or Kids. If you know that we got to make a big change here, this goes for adults too, that it actually takes 14 days of not eating any of those chemicals or additives or colorings or dyes 14 days for your body and your taste buds to clean out. That is 2 solid weeks. If in the past you have tried before to upgrade some of their stuff and you're met with a lot of resistance, it's usually because it hasn't gone on long enough or been consistent enough for a 2-week window for their taste buds to actually change and to start opening. So a little encouragement. If you're going to do the gradual route to this, know that it's going to take some time. You're doing this as a long-term game here, not a short-term quick fix, snap of a fingers, all of a sudden they're eating broccoli. It's very different than that. Depending where you are at, if you want to do the hard pivot, it's going to take at least 14 days straight away from all of that other stuff. So that may prove to be a challenge, depending the stage of life that you're in and what they're doing and where else they're maybe getting food from. But I would say even after 2 weeks, I hope that feels encouraging. 2 weeks is all it can take to really start. And it's not going to be this extreme change, but after 2 weeks, you will start to notice that they may be more willing to try different things, or that the things that they ate before that were maybe healthy, maybe an apple, that apple is going to taste so much better to them. And so they will be more willing to do something like an apple versus that bag of Doritos or something else. That's just an example. In this process, I would also say just a reminder that you're not trying to come in and be this crazy enforcer. Just going to get a lot of pushback with that. The goal here is to keep it light, keep it easy. You want them to be asking questions about why versus you shoving information down their throat. In the process of this, if you know there are certain snack foods or certain desserts, maybe it's the same type of thing, it's just a different brand, or it's without all the chemicals. So even with something like dinner or dinner foods, try to think of what their favorite dinners are or what their favorite types of meals are. And are there ways that you could even start to upgrade that slowly? Maybe it's the regular pasta and you try the red lentil pasta or quinoa pasta that has a little bit more protein in it, a little bit more nourishment to it, or adding things in to a smoothie or something where you're not coming at this from a place of you're doing this wrong, all the foods you love are bad. But let's start with the things that you do tend to go for, and let's just think about how we could upgrade those, even in a tiny way. That would be probably the best piece of advice I could give you, is this is all about your approach and your energy behind it. So keep it as low-key as you can. Keep it as casual, as lighthearted, even though internally you may be wanting to go full force and just get angry and mad and frustrated, because I get it. If you are spending so much of your time and energy catering to all of their different needs and preferences and different foods and different meals and doing all those things, and also spending a lot of money on the more kid-friendly foods, you're trying to get the healthier chicken nuggets because that's all they'll eat. That becomes so frustrating. You probably do have a lot of pent up anger about it, but you can come at this with a very loving, casual vibe. I think it is probably going to be in your favor if you can do that. So the third thing I will say here is just looking at this from a higher level view of most families, I would say, operate on a very heavy snack culture, where whenever the kid is hungry, they're just eating a ton of tiny meals or a ton of small snacks throughout the day. They're always grazing, they're always hungry. This can be one of the leading causes of kids refusing their meals, is that they're not actually hungry for their meals because they're so used to snacks. And who doesn't like snack food better than meal food? I mean, even as an adult. But the food at meals is going to be so much more nourishing and grounding and life-giving. And when you're working on that taste bud thing, first of all, snacks get a lot more simple. Like a snack is an apple or some celery with some sea salt. Or it's sometimes I give my kids, you guys are going to roll your eyes at this, I give them just beans, a can of rinsed beans, and they're just munching away. If they're actually hungry, that's what they'll eat. If kids are not hungry, and this is true for adults too, you could always eat snack food. So it gives them a disconnection between their hunger and their bodies, which is so important. This is entirely what my program is about, is teaching adults some of these basic things about what does hunger feel like in your body? What foods help quench that hunger the most? What foods feel so good while you're eating it and after? So that connection to your body and to hunger, I personally think is important. Again, I'm not an expert on this and on kid food. I'm just sharing my perspective of what I see happen all the time with adults. So much of it comes from snack culture, especially for women. A lot of times in the diet culture, we're taught to eat smaller meals throughout the day. It's more ladylike, it's more polite, it's more petite, it's more cute. What is that? It's so strange. And I think there's a lot of that happens with kids. Oh, they're kids. They are just hungry all the time, but not really hungry because they only eat small amounts. And I have found it so helpful because I am personally annoyed by having to stop all the time for snacks. I just would rather eat meals. And then if you need a snack to bridge the gap, let's do that. It's more efficient. You're eating better quality food. You're getting better variety in things than just snacking all the time. Just an idea here, just something to think about, that if you are in more of the snack culture in your family, that maybe putting a little bit more emphasis on the meals instead, which also means that you're going to have a little bit of structure around it or some rules. Because if your kids, let's say they come home from school and they've already had their lunch, but dinner time is going to be the next meal, if you know that it's in an hour window of dinner time, do not let them have free access to the snack closet. This is so funny because this is so personal to me. We had total free access when we got home from school. You could eat whatever you wanted out of the pantry and all the snacks. And of course, me and my sister never chose the things that would have helped fill us up if we were actually hungry. And it was more like the emotional process of it. That's what you get, was this treat after school. So me as an adult, I think about this a lot because I was never hungry for dinner. So it never looked good. It never looked appealing because my body was never hungry because I had just been snacking all afternoon right up until dinner. This is something that's very much a cultural norm. So if you're listening to this and being like, oh, guilty, don't feel guilty about this. This is just the norm of how most people operate. I'm just purely trying to offer a different perspective on this, of a way you could change the lens if you're so frustrated with your kids not eating dinner, maybe because they're not hungry, because they've been eating snacks all day long. By the way, I'm not against snacks. My kids eat snacks. I think it's very age dependent and stage dependent. You're not trying to starve your kids. My kids eat 2 snacks a day for sure, sometimes 3, but it's in that mid-morning time and then in that mid-afternoon time. But I'm thinking about it in my mind. If it's in the hour window before dinner, they're getting veggies. Because I'm in my mind, if you're actually hungry, sure, you can have a snack. You can have peppers, carrots, there's cucumbers. You want a little hummus, that's great. Sometimes I'll let them do olives, but it has to be something that's actually nutrient dense, something that could maybe be on their dinner plate. And that's a great window of time if they are actually hungry to get them to eat some more veggies. But if they've got 2 hours to go, of course, have a piece of fruit or have a piece of cheese or, whatever works for your family. But I have a mental rule for myself. If it's an hour to an hour and a half before dinner, I'm not going to let them have just whatever they want because they will fill up, and good luck then at the table. If you've made dinner, you're going through the process, all the effort, all the time, all the money, all the ingredients, and then it's just so annoying, then maybe start to work backwards a little bit. If they are hungry in that hour before dinner, I just offer them veggies. If they don't want it, that's fine. Either way, it's fine because then they'll be hungrier for dinner. If they are hungry, then they're eating their veggies and a little less pressure, quote unquote, for them to be eating tons of veggies at dinner if they already did. Again, I am not an expert in this. I'm just sharing my perspective of what I have seen from working with thousands of adults to having my own kids, to realizing and knowing the way that our taste buds control so much, but also it's our behaviors and what we consider normal. And this snack thing, I think, gets in the way for so many adults too. It's never really satisfying and your hunger is never really quenched in that way. And putting more of the intention into your meals where there's vegetables and there's good healthy fat and there's some protein, that they're balanced and nothing crazy. It can be very simple. But I think a lot of stress would be relieved just even in some of these switches of how you're operating or what you're offering, or thinking about the timing of when you're offering that thing could make a really big difference. Another thing I'll say on this note is that I know for a lot of families that maybe their kids are super picky, or they just want their kids to eat anything. Maybe their kids are trying to gain more weight, or they're a little lower on the growth curve or whatever it may be. They just want them to eat anything. And that is great too. And then it's more about how can you incorporate more nutrient dense foods into their life. So maybe that does mean that they are snacking more often, but it's just you're upgrading the quality of those snacks. So it's not like they're eating air. They're not just eating the veggie straws. What is that? That doesn't give them any protein, any fat. There's not really veggies in there, no fiber. So maybe it's like a chia seed pudding, or it's banana with nut butter on it, if you can do it, or sunflower butter, more dense things for them versus the airy stuff that's not really going to do anything. Take this all with a grain of salt of focusing on the main concerns that you might have for your own kids individually and knowing their preferences. Many kids are picky because it's maybe a developmental thing. It's connected to something else about textures or flavors, and there's something more there. So these thoughts are not talking specifically about those cases. It's more general pickiness, general love of snacks, but hates of meals, and not really wanting to eat tons of veggies, always prefers something more sweet, that kind of thing. So I hope you guys are getting the gist of what I'm saying there too. For a lot of families, there's this window of after dinner of maybe their kids refuse the dinner, maybe because they had too many snacks, or maybe not, maybe their kids just refusing dinner. And so then after dinner, they're allowed to have anything because the parents are starting to worry and freak out. Well, if they go to bed hungry, they may wake up in the middle of the night, or they're going to wake up at 5 a.m, come get me. And so whatever they want to eat, the kids know that. And it can become this power struggle. I know if I refuse dinner, I know I'll get offered the bowl of cereal, the sweetened yogurt, the whatever it is. I know that that's coming. So then they do continue to refuse the dinner. Just something to maybe try is 1 or 2 options that are the go-to for dinner. You could actually hold the dinner. We do this sometimes in our house. Like, okay, that's fine if you're not hungry. Totally listen to your body. Love that for you. If you're not hungry, that's fine. Just come sit with us anyways. And then if it's not eaten, then I just keep it there. And then yes, it's cold. We don't have a microwave. So I'm like, it's cold. That's okay. That's your choice. If you're still hungry, but they will eat it. Even if it's cold soup or chili or whatever it is, if they're hungry, they will eat it versus they're waiting out for the sweetened cereal or something that feels more like a treat to them or a snack to them. That's one way to go about it. The second would be limiting the options of what they do get to pick. So maybe it is yogurt. Maybe it's unsweetened, but it has a little banana in it, or it has a tiny bit of honey or maple syrup, but at least it's full fat yogurt, something that's dense and hearty and going to fill them up. In our house, if they say that they're hungry and maybe it's right before bedtime, we offer cashews or almonds, and that's it. They don't get the choice of fruit or other snacks or the things that they maybe find more fun or interesting. If you're hungry, great. We can fill that need, and it's great to listen to your body. And kids burn through stuff so quickly. They might be hungry because it's been 3 hours since we've had dinner. And so offering something that's maybe not sweet. It could be an avocado. It could be a hard-boiled egg. It could be a scoop of nut butter. It could be nuts themselves. It's not endless options. It's maybe just 1 or 2 things that they know and can expect. But it's also not something that's sending off dopamine hits in their brain of, ooh, this is way more exciting than dinner. I'm going to hold out for this. It gets the job done, stabilizes their blood sugar, fills them up to some extent, but it's not something that they would maybe necessarily choose on their own. But if they're hungry, again, they are more likely to eat it. Another fun way you could think about doing this, and for clients is where I suggest starting, is with the treats and the dessert. Because there's so many options now. Even looking at the type of ice cream that they want, and then looking the next time when you're out of the ice cream, when you go to the store to buy a new one, what's a different brand that has just 3 or 4 ingredients in the ingredient list, and slowly over time starting to shift to things that are a little bit more simple, a little bit more real, a little bit more clean, but it's still dessert or a treat. You're not taking that away. This is not about depriving anyone of anything. It's just about trying to infuse more of the good stuff so that it crowds out some of the stuff that can be causing a lot of problems systemically with their taste buds, with sugar cravings, because the more you have of it, the more you want. When we're in our house and it's just a normal day, what are the go-tos? My kids are not deprived by any means. I'm always baking muffins and scones and there's cookies. But for the most part, when I'm baking that stuff, if there is any added sugar, beside a mashed banana, it might be a little bit of maple syrup or a little bit of honey, which is a slower release into their bloodstream than something that's pure sugar or high fructose corn syrup or some of the chemicals or the additives or the sweeteners. So taking that one category as a mini focus point can give you that sense of like, okay, we're starting small. We're starting with things you know they're going to like because they're just delicious and they taste good. But making that shift there first makes sometimes doing some of the other stuff a little bit easier. Because when you're lowering the intensity of the sugar, or maybe the frequency of it, or you're just upgrading the quality of it, a lot of those shifts start to happen on their own in regards to their taste buds and sugar cravings itself. They're satisfied with less of an amount of it. And just knowing that it is the best quality is just a really great place to start if you feel a little overwhelmed at this process. This is just the places that I would start personally. Knowing what I know about creating a good relationship to food, because I used to have a terrible one, that this is not about perfection. This is not about saying this food is good and this food is bad. This is purely about bringing in a little bit more of the education that none of us received in school, but that we should. Think about this as a generational shift in the way that your kids learn to relate to food, the way that they learn to interact with it, the way they learn to be in awe of it and be so joyful with it and experience all of the beauty and the pleasure that there is with it, and the amazing way of what it fosters as a family to be on the same page with what you're doing, with your food being an expression of your values and the things that you find the most important. And I think as parents, we all want to do the best job that we can. And until we know better, it's hard to do better. And so I hope that this episode gave you a couple of different things to think about, and maybe that were new for you or learn or that you haven't tried before. And just knowing that it's not ever a lost cause, even if you don't see change. And again, you're not looking for immediate change. This is not a quick fix. This is over time. You're looking to upgrade the quality of the ingredients you're putting in your family's bodies. And you're looking over time to change what they gravitate towards, what they're open towards, what they're willing to try because of their taste buds being more open. And you're even looking for that they are watching you and they're taking it all in, even if you don't see any change in their behavior right away. I am certain that doing this over time, think about this over the next year, over the next 2 years, the next 3 years for them, like that is going to become their norm. If you can approach this in a very easy, casual way as much as possible, even though you may feel internally very different, but thinking about that long-term game of them going out as adults into the world when they start cooking for themselves. What will they know? What will they think about? What are the recipes that they will want to gravitate towards and to try themselves? And what are the things that you're modeling to them about food in general and how it relates to your body and how this definition of being healthy can be this amazing thing and something that kids are interested in, not just about, oh, you only can eat bland and boring and blah foods. It's up to us to define what we want our children to experience. And then as they turn into adults, what will be the ways and things that they would teach their kids? And to me, that is the reason why whenever I feel like, oh my gosh, this takes some time and it takes some effort and it takes some intention to do and to plan and to have stuff in my pantry and my freezer I can pull together quickly to make quick meals that everybody will participate in and eat and try. When I get to the place where I don't know, yeah, of course it would be easier to just order out. But then I think about the impact of what I do most of the time. Of course, we eat out, order out, we get pizza. This is not about having to live in a rigid way or being extreme or all or nothing about it. This is about what can you be doing over time and how will that impact them on a generational level, on their own health, on their own vibrancy. And to me, that teaches them self-worth and respect, that they are worthy of the good stuff and that they are worthy of treating their bodies well. And that they know that when they do, the outputs that has in their life of how their energy is and how powerful they feel or how strong they are or how kind they can be, that is the number one input that affects so many outputs in our life. And to be able to have that gift as a kid, no matter what their ages are, to have that modeled or talked about or played with or even examined, even thought about, because most people don't even think about this. I just want to encourage you that the fact that you are even thinking about this, even wondering about this, even open to this, even feeling like I messed it all up or it's going all wrong, the fact that you're here and listening to this is so powerful. And do not give up. Keep trying in little small ways, in ways that feel good to you. Maybe that's the big sweep, going through everything. Maybe it's starting with something small, but whatever the effort that you are putting into this, know that you are changing stuff. You're changing the energy around food in your house just by thinking about this, by wanting to learn, by wanting to grow, by being curious, by being willing to test them things out or going against the grain of what's normal or what every other kid is doing or what the schools are doing or the norms. We need so many more people that are aware of this so that we can slowly start to shift some of these norms into ways that help us lead healthier and happier lives. I hope that you found just one thing in here to try or to experiment with. And I would love to know. Please come find me on Instagram. We've been posting these episodes in my feed so that you guys have a place to ask questions or anything's following up or just to share like what was your favorite part of this or the most helpful thing. And I really just think that it's amazing that you are here. And I think there's so much that we can do, especially when we share together. What are the things that are working or that you have tried or these little switches, even mentally, that we have for ourselves? I love you so much. I'm sending you all the luck in the world. And again, please come find me if you have any other follow-up questions or things that didn't make sense or things you're going to try or excited about. I love you, and I'll see you back here next week. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.